Welcome to Magic Flavouring, the Magic Gathering podcast. We talk about all things magic, flavour design, and lore. I'm your host, Andy Mann.
Hello, this is Nathan Cancel.
And we're going back to school, baby.
Yeah. Well, it's more university, right?
Oh, well,
or
even,
college, or whatever you want to call it.
Worse if you're. I mean, well, I was about to say if you're in the UK, the US college system's pretty fucked for money as well. But yeah, student fees. So there's for Americans who don't necessarily obviously keep up with the UK world of economics and education,
because we're a bastard country, we won't get involved in your war.
God, we're there already. There's a lot of discourse in the UK at the moment around the fact that the interest on student loan repayments outstrips pretty much any amount of income that you can have.
Yeah, I'm still paying mine off now, and I'm like, I don't understand how. Like, this was pre-expensive time.
Well, so we're on the same payment plan. They changed it after your year, I think. Mm-hmm. So I had a 30 grand student loan, and I've paid so far, I think, 20 grand back into it over the time that I've been away from uni, and I still owe them £28,000.
Wow. Crazy.
How is that true?
Yeah, I know, it's mad, isn't it?
It's just like, it's just a tax to go to university. I'm just going to have it till I die. Fuck
yeah,
it,
fucking whatever. Yeah.
Anyway, Magic the Gathering.
Indeed, Strixhaven.
Do you think they have student loans on Strixhaven?
Well, I was going to say, like, I think you don't want to get into, like, the fiscal elements of the faculty and stuff like that. As soon as they start going, like, oh, let's try and ground it in reality, it's like, yeah, but not too much.
Do you think, now that, because this comes into play, in this story, they've really dived deep into the sort of cultural exchange of a lot of the different planes. They're really digging into that idea now.
I think it would be quite cool to, when the set's fully released, one of the things I think we should do is like a micro flavour episode is just see all the different people from all the different planes and see what influences they can bring over, you know?
Do you think that they have, in the same way that, like, you know, the dollar versus pound sterling or whatever?
Oh, it's definitely like an exchange thing.
Do you think, like, Ravnik and Xenos are, like, actually the currency that everyone trades in now?
Yeah,
or,
I mean, how many... I guess that's another interesting conversation point, or, like, an investigation, is how many planes do we know that have, like, a stated currency beyond just gold? Because in certain planes, like, certain things will be considered more valuable, right? It's like kind of like in the TVA where Affinity Stones are used as paperweights. You know, like some worlds it'd be like, yeah, well, crystals are our mountains, so we're not really impressed by your ruby.
That was about the only thing that I really liked about the Loki TV shows, was that detail.
Well, they just diminished the Infinity Saga to basically nothing more than a passing.
I thought that was really fun. Mention. I thought that was like, do you know what? We all took this a little too seriously, didn't we? Anyway, we're here to talk about the latest stories.
SOS, please someone help me. It's not helping. Right. Oh wow! I didn't expect you to be on board with that at all.
And not just the main web fiction, but also the prologue episode, and also one of the side stories.
Well, I'm actually going to talk about more than one of the side stories.
Oh, here we go.
Yeah, but it's fine. We'll do the prologue after, because the prologue wasn't really a prologue. It was more just a, hey, you know how Nathan and Andy from Magic the Flavouring fame keep complaining that we don't do enough stories when we do Universes Beyond? Well, here's an extra story as well as the story.
Yeah.
I feel like that was specifically for us.
And they brought out a novel.
Yeah, and there's a novel. It's almost like they've turned around and been like, okay, guys, all right.
Well, they've got all this free time to make all the stories.
Let's see how much of a monkey paw situation it is once we've read the novel. But for the most part, this story I found to be fairly inoffensive.
Is that the baseline of what we expect from these stories?
Yeah, I think so. I mean, you want to go in being like, cool, I want to be reasonably entertained whilst also moving the story forwards, whilst also having some good character analysis or some good character development, right? And those are the three things you really need from a Magic story. And I think one of the things we said about Lorwyn Eclipsed was, as much as it was good to know these new characters, it was a bit weird seeing them out of place. As much as we're getting to learn a little bit about Lorwyn, it all felt a little bit not quite gelling together, and then the character development for Oko was shit. So those three elements, I think, are quite an easy thing to analyze these stories, because those are the three axes that they're I feel like they're always trying to play to.
Yeah.
So saying that, I'm really bad at doing synopses. I end up writing too much. So I'm going to try and barrel through this as quickly as humanly possible.
Well, our modern style of doing these things is that we talk as we go, whereas we used to just sort of sit and listen to me for 20 minutes and then talk about it.
Yeah. Let's see how well that works when I do it. Okay, so
who wrote this one?
So this is K. Arsenault Rivera. They've also done the Dragonstorm story, the Ether Drift story, the Worlds of Eldraine story, the March of the Machine story, the Crimson Vow story. They're pretty much the story person now.
Yeah, I mean, there's definitely little like cadre of writers that they keep coming back to, and I think this got solidified sort of just after, say, Brothers War, because there was a few that were knocking around, and they did in the past have like a lot of authors which. Like, they always worked, like, Django Wexler was, like, one that they worked with a lot. Alison Lur's got a look in quite a bit, and they come back for one of the side stories. But you've got, today, if we're going to talk about all the stories we're going to talk about, we're going to be talking about, Seanan McGuire wrote the novel that we were just talking about. K. Arsenault Rivera wrote this story here. Valerie Valdez wrote the prologue, Ral Zarek story.
Seanan came back for the Quintorius Can story, which I want to touch on as well.
And these are all people that have really developed the story over the past, maybe now, like 4 or 5 years. And so it's not, I like consistency.
Yeah, and it feels like a collaborative effort to try and present the story with all of these things that are going on in a really easy to digest fashion, whilst also doing a good job of like bringing in new characters, furthering and finalizing some of the old characters. I think we've said this before about KAR, and that's that they're very good at staying true to the characters and not having to jump about between different authors. Each one wants to express the character a different way, which has in the past been a nightmare.
Yeah.
It's really nice to have that consistent through line, and each time you pick back up on the characters, if there's something that feels a bit weird, it's not just out of the circumstance of different authors writing it. It's that, okay, this was a deliberate narrative choice, and then it can have a little bit more integrity, and this character can build up over time, instead of you having to go like, well, I enjoyed... It's like when you see different artworks of Planeswalkers from sets, and you can choose, like, which your favourite representation of this character. Now we're kind of getting one consistent representation narratively, which I think is important. Yeah,
and actually it's funny, that is a real direct parallel. I'm glad I actually mentioned that. I hadn't thought about it, because so if you take, like, I don't know, Magali Villeneuve, for example, did the first sort of 3 or 4 iterations of Narset, and then when you see different versions of Narset done through other artists, it has that sort of bedrock starting point where they go, okay, this was Magali's sort of like, you know, Bible for Narset, and then when they do different things, you're right, it's a considered choice rather than just throwing shit at the wall and being like, random Tarkiri lady, you know.
Yeah, which made us then think that there might be some weird timey-wimey thing going on, which never actually happened. But again, maybe that was a thing that they wanted to do before they went, actually, we can just push on this and do a reality fracture thing later down the line.
I did find that any time I wrote paper notes for this, like a proper little spod.
Little SWAT.
Spod's also one. Do you know what? There's a problem with things like that, where when you say like these little sort of colloquialisms for like derogatory terms for like types of people, especially in the UK, you're never quite sure if that has some sort of like racist origin that you don't know about.
Or some like classist, elitist. Basically, are we offending someone? Probably
because our society is awful. I did write paper notes, and every time I found myself writing a bullet point, because I knew you were doing the synopsis, so I didn't have to worry about that. What was nice about this story is that anytime I got annoyed or like, fuck this, that and the other, none of it was to do with the writing or the story direction. It was all just like, this character's a dickhead. And it's like, because she's writing them as a dickhead.
Yeah.
And like, you know what I mean? So it's,
Nothing felt insincere.
No.
And I think that's I think especially for this kind of story, because it did read a little bit like a young adult story at times, because we're following a bunch of young adults. And it did feel a little bit twee at times, but I didn't mind that, because for me, like, the greater arc of Magic is more important than the individual character moments, and I'm going to probably brush past a fair few of those, saying that there is a lot of really good interaction between the characters, and it is consistent, it is building relationships, and you will come back to these characters in the future and be like, I know exactly who this person is, even if they're only mentioned a few times through the story, because of that consistency.
And they are, as we'll see, especially with Lewin, for example.
Yeah.
And I have to say, it is Lewin, not Llewellyn, as I keep trying to say. They are also vessels for digging down onto that larger Omen Path existence that we're in, of going like, we're sort of now in this world where we have to see how elves from this plane interact with elves from this plane, and this character is a gateway into seeing that.
It's funny, right? Because that would have been really good to see in the Omen Path arc.
Yeah, well, they were too concerned with which hats they were wearing. That week.
Exactly, right.
Anyway,
okay,
I'll let you get on.
Let's get into it. There are 6 stories with this, and Episode 1 is a little bit more unorthodox than the rest of them.
Yes.
It is titled Penmanship Practice, where our Lorwyn 5, but not that Lorwyn 5, are setting up their totally not tablets for interstudy communications. It makes sense for Abigail to lead this, as she benefits the most from written communication, both due to her deafness as well as her preferred school, which I think is quite cute. The chapter allows us to see the students and how they've now settled into their second year with their specific schools now set. Shock horror, I wonder which ones they all went into. It's not like they're all colour-coded or whatever. It resets everyone's individuality and personality traits, well, despite being, in my opinion, a little twee. I think like it didn't necessarily work sometimes, the way that exposition was turned into, or dialogue was turned into exposition.
Yeah, so it's all like formatted like they're all texting each other on like
it's a group chat.
Yeah, it's a group chat.
Yeah.
Yeah.
But it doesn't necessarily it sometimes slips back into, okay, this is just narrative, but you've kind of had to plinky-plonk it about.
Yeah.
Abigail is mildly overbearing in particular, fulfilling her trope, as well as organising all of the, as I said, for lack of a better word, group chat. Kirill is now super swole and clearly very confident in the group and in themselves. Sana cannot help being overly verbose, which is hilarious. Sana continues to be a really cool character that you only ever see little glimpses of.
Sana is, the theme of this whole arc is that Sana did not get enough breathing time compared to some of the other characters.
Yeah.
And I think it's probably because this story just wasn't about them.
And it's also, I feel like their character, until they give them more dimensions, can just be a two-dimensional caricature and it work.
They're just a little Goblin Theatre kid.
Yeah, exactly. So he gets carried away with reams of messages before getting cut off by Tam. Lewin is much less talkative to begin with than the rest of them, and we learn throughout the story that they are being bullied and persecuted by the other elves on Strixhaven, and is having a tougher time away from home than anyone else. Although, I guess, other than Tam, everyone else is already from Arcavios, right? We know Kirill is. We assume Sanar is?
Yeah.
Because I don't know where else we've seen that goblin with the hair and with the little gnomey hair. Right?
So yeah, I think Tam and Lewin are the only two characters.
Because Tam's from Chandler.
Yeah.
So Tam also seems to be the most level-headed out of everyone, is less self-focused and more responsive to everyone else's questions, and offers advice across the board. We also see her building a relationship with Lewin. There is no scale of time for these messages, but they are clearly taking place over an extended period. It could be days, it could be a week, who knows. We also learn of Professor Fell, who is a Witherbloom faculty member, and who has taken a group of students, including Lewin and Tam, to Titan's Nest, and has a reputation for severity. And as I put here, I get Snape-coded vibes from this guy.
Yeah, do you know what? So, I mean, look, let's just pierce the elephant in the room. Obviously, Magic School is going to have some sort of like Harry Potter references.
Yeah.
I don't think intentional, and like, obviously they're trying desperately to not be associated with Harry Potter as an IP, because Harry Potter's quite toxic. I did sort of feel like, fuck, man, you really...
It's just Snape.
He's a potions master.
And also, the worst thing is, it's hilarious that they've also, and I don't think this has any bearing on anything, but obviously they have racially swapped Snape in the current series,
the TV show,
and he is a black planeswalker in this, which it can't be an accident.
Well, I think that is. I actually do think it's.
And if it is, that's such an unfortunate parallel, because if it's not deliberate, it is a little. It does. I can't help but notice it. Yeah.
Now, what? So this is Delian. Is his first
Delian
name?
Fell.
Delian Fell, a new planeswalker character, which they are rarer since obviously they're trying to not focus as much on planeswalkers. And obviously they're always a bit careful of adding new characters into what's already a saturated market for planeswalkers.
Especially when everyone got really annoyed when they started stripping everyone back, even though that's kind of what the story needed.
Was what they needed.
It's a really hard balance.
He's a black-green planeswalker. He's a Witherbloom Dean. Or, no, not Dean. He's just a professor, isn't he? Now, his character is very well realised and fleshed out for the fact that we've only ever met him in this story. However, it is sort of just another mean black planeswalker professor character.
Black and hints of magic colour.
Yes, obviously.
But yeah, I feel like the problem with Delian Fell is that every aspect of him is just surface level, and it fulfills a role, and that's it. There is no greater depth, and we'll come round to this full circle later, because I think it's better explained once we find out everything about them. To begin with, they are just your typical.
Get some.
Yeah, he's just your typical bully at the beginning, or not even like a bully, but like the way he does his first. Or the way we first get introduced to him is when Abigail was doing a class with him, and he basically said, here's a poisonous thing in front of you and a non-poisonous thing in front of you. If you can't identify which, and by the way, you're making a tea out of one of them, good luck, and I'll give you the antidote if you choose the wrong one.
You're going to shit your own eyes.
Yeah, like you're going to kind of die, but I'll bring you back, don't worry about it. So at that point, Abigail was like, nah, I'm alright, thanks, this isn't the class for me.
What are his planeswalker powers?
Life and death. He's very much like the Golgari with the bloom thing of being able to control life essence.
Cool.
Yeah.
Good to know.
We'll come back to that again a little later as well. And I said, despite the slight ham-fisting of dialogue into exposition, it did set the stage for the story well, as well as introducing everybody properly if you didn't read the Lore and Eclipse stories.
Yes, actually, that's a good point.
Yeah, if you just come straight into the story, you already know who everyone is. You might feel a little bit much, because it is just very much everyone going, "This is me! Kirill, Kirill, Kirill! Tam, tam, tam! Sana, Sana!" It's like, okay, right, cool, fantastic, whatever. I'm getting it.
I suppose they do. It does have to function that way, doesn't it?
Of course,
Yeah,
absolutely. Yeah. So then this is the only story that is like this. Chapter 2, or Episode 2, sorry, Traces and Travails. So, Travels and Travails.
Mm-hmm.
Okay, that's my autocorrector fucking me over there. We are back in Titan's Grave, where the skeletal remains of an ancient giant resides in lush marshlands, following Delian Fell's field trip, but this time from within the story, rather than from being random
it's more traditional narrative now.
Fell continues to prove himself an ass, asking vague questions to his students, expecting insight without explanation.
Mm-hmm.
Lewin continues to get bullied by the other elves. Elves are just dicks all around, apparently.
Right. So let's pull over into the fucking lay-by here of elf racism.
Yeah.
Can they chill the fuck out?
They're just such assholes.
Do you know what I mean? So there's a few things going on here, because there's about 2 or 3 story beats throughout these 6 episodes where we kind of get worse and worse and worse with these Strixhaven or Arcavian elves, because they are Arcavian, aren't they? The elves.
Yeah.
The Arcavian elves having a go at the Lauren elves, and presumably every other elf species across the multiverse is some sort of like superiority complex compared to all the others. And I just sort of feel like, do you ever have a friend in a like a larger friendship group who, like, their whole thing is like, oh, I'm just a bit of a bastard. And then after about maybe, once you've all kind of grown up, thank you.
I meant me.
Oh, right, no. But after you've all sort of grown up a little bit, you just sort of think, why are we fucking friends with this guy? Like, why do any of the other races of the multiverse...
It's funny how being a bit of a twat, but pulling it, or feeling like you're pulling it off, has the almost like charismatic charm when you're young, to be like, oh, that's interesting and edgy. And you grow up, you're like, oh, that's exhausting and boring. You know, I'd rather have someone who's consistent that doesn't have amazing things to talk about than someone who's like, I'm kooky and crazy.
They do touch a little bit on this as well. It's actually, I mean, it's very good writing actually in terms of exploring this whole thing. And this is why I think this story really sings with this exploration. The fact that the other denizens of Arcavios who go to Strixhaven, whether they're students or professors or whatever, push Lewin to be like, look, you might have an easier time if you go and hang out with the other elves. And that's almost exactly the same way of being like, look, there's other people who are like you.
Races should stay with their own races, right?
Yeah,
it's kind of
like,
hey, separatists.
Like, hey, you use a wheelchair. Why don't you go and talk to the other person who uses a wheelchair? Yeah. It's like we're all individual people.
Yeah,
like
and that's the funny thing, right? And it feels very tone deaf, considering that, like, one of the things that links elves usually is like their immortality or their long life.
Oh yeah.
Whereas Lewin specifically has a shorter life, so probably has more in touch with a regular mortal than the rest of the elves, which I think is part of the reason why they treat him badly anyway.
And obviously, it's entirely intentional that is what is happening to Lewin, like within the narrative of the story, and it's like it's something that I don't think is the main message of this story arc, but is like a hugely important one moving forwards. Because you could say that about almost any interplanar like minglings now, as you sort of go like, fuck, they really did a good job of making everyone very different, and just sort of assuming everyone's the same is going to be weird.
I think it's also clever that they could have had options on doing this with Tam, who's a very strange version of a Gorgon. They could have done it with the disability that Abigail has. They could have done it with the non-binary aspect of Kirill. The fact they didn't touch on any of those and went, no, it's the fish out of water, being away from home, being different, but not for any particular reason, apart from being from somewhere else. That's a really safe place to look into to put a spotlight on it, because it doesn't feel like it's going to hit home for a lot of people, but not in a way that feels like it's attacking you or trying to over apologize. And it's all otherwise sensitive subjects. Those ones are a bit too sensitive. So it's quite nice to do something that's a little less.
It's a direct way of doing it, and I think also it's a very prescient way in sort of like just it's evergreen, right? It's like, you look like those people over there, so I assume you're going to have a better time. And it's like it's coming from a place of like good, but obviously completely blind to
best
actually
intentions, unfortunately.
Yeah, very good.
And Chaos or Rivera calls every bully's cliche bluff by standing up, having Lewin stand up to his peers. But maybe takes it a little bit too far, because he ends up getting out a knife and slashing up one of them and getting appropriately reprimanded. furthering that idea of like, what's the point of standing up for yourself whenever you do, you always get into as much trouble, if not more trouble, than the bully.
Yeah, I mean, it's like I often think this and this will happen again later on. There's two moments in this story where I was like, if I lived in a magical world where like there are races that were like giants and gorgons and elves, and everyone kind of had weaponry on them or could do magic, I would not be going around
chat shit.
talking shit. Because, like, of course I'm going to get cut. Like, do you know what I mean? Like,
exactly.
That dude has a knife.
Yeah,
like,
and he's like, because he even has a moment where he's like, why am I taking this shit? I was like a scout back in Lorwyn. And then it's funny because they call him Little Goat, which is basically just a slur.
Because he's got the big horns.
Yeah, like it's like Nerf herder, you know? It's like, how dare you? And then it's funny because they go like, because he gets he goes wandering off. The other elves are like, oh, are you going off to graze? And he turns around and goes, I don't graze, I reap.
And
then brings up, there's like,
sick.
I don't know, it's like that moment of where in the video he goes, I've got the power of God and the Force on my side. I can't remember what the meme is, but it's okay, buddy. And then I guess also because it's a magical world, repercussions aren't quite as harsh because it's very easy to go, all right, healy or slashy ain't no more anymore. So Lewin is dismissed into the marshlands to find something worth Fell's time or to not come back at all, which he takes to heart. As he wanders, dismaying of his circumstance, he discovers the Titan's bones underfoot are hollow, and the sound of his steps resounding as he treads. Unfortunately, in his excitement to bring something valuable back to Professor Fell, he falls quite literally into the next story beat as the bones give way and the floor collapses.
Yeah.
This is the second time also in these, we'll see it later, but there's also another moment of side story this happens. And this happens a lot. Also, this is exactly what happened in Lorwyn, or as they fell into Lorwyn. Mm-hmm. People just need to be paying more attention to what's under their feet, man. When he awakens, Lewin finds himself in a massive subterranean hollow. Before him are 6 archaics, their chanting voices intertwined with one another as a squall of dark energy crackles between them. As Lewin attempts to document what he sees, the congregation turn on him, and Lewin scampers back up out of the hollow and is confronted by Professor Fell at the top of his struggled ascension.
Now, sorry, just before we go on, archaics.
Yes.
So just to set the scene for people who don't know what archaics are. So archaics are these giant humanoids with like big sort of bony heads. A lot of people thought that they could have been like Eldrazi.
They are Eldrazi coded,
but
a little bit like, especially Kozilek with like the obsidian blades. And
that was a
like
big
that.
sort of theory that was going around, is that actually there's some sort of like proto or even like future version of Eldrazi. They've got multiple arms, and the lore of them is that they are oracles who are the sort of uber mages on the plane of Arcavios. So there's only ever one at a time, and when an oracle dies in our linear time, their essence gets sprung back to the beginning of the birth of Arcavios as a plane, and they get reborn as an archaic to then live out the rest of time with all of like this knowledge. And they offer basically like they're like sphinxes.
Yeah,
they offer like secrets and training to all the different mages.
Yeah.
Now, I always thought that they were this sort of like mirror image to the Demogoth Titans, because the Demogoth Titans on this plane, which are like the demon allegory, also have multiple arms and are giant. But I don't think from this story, because we do meet a couple of Demogoths later on, that is what they are. And also, the bones of the Titan that they're in.
Yeah.
I thought that was like a Demogoth Titan. But how big is this?
Must be, so this is something I want to talk about later. Like, it's not really explained, and I think there's another time that I want to talk about this as well, where it comes up in a side story, where I think it provides a little bit more context. But yeah, the fact that it is so colossal, like there's a lot of things in this story, especially when we get into like episodes like 3 to 5, of where I'm like, I didn't know how to picture it in my head because it just sounds so ridiculous and it doesn't make any sense to me. And I was like, I can't, as someone who's like played enough like D&D and things like that, like explain to me a circumstance in a room and I can probably imagine it quite well. But with this, I found it very difficult to create a space in my mind that represented what the story was telling me. So I kind of had to like just yada yada, yeah, sure, I'm sure, whatever, you know. Yeah, so as he climbs back out, Professor Fell is there to grab him and be like, hey, you fool, what are you doing? You're trying to get yourself killed. Yeah. And then instead of telling him any of things that he just saw, Lewin, in his scared mind, unfortunately, just does not say anything. Which is interesting because the last thing that Fell said to him was, yo, you better come back with something interesting or not come back at all. Yeah. But then it almost looked like Lewin wasn't going to come back at all. And Professor Fell was like, oh shit, I didn't actually mean like, go die.
Yeah. Fell's always on the precipice of being like actually abusive, but then doesn't. And clearly, he gets accused, I think. Has he had that conversation with Jadzi yet?
No, not yet. We're going to get to that soon.
So there are moments in the story where, like, other people sort of go, why are you being such a psychopath? And he's like, I promise you I'm not. And then obviously, it's clear that he isn't. You know?
But even then, I feel like there's also a degree of, it's all very good to say, oh, don't worry, I'm a nice guy, really. It's like, yeah, but if you're not presenting that, are you really a nice guy? Anyway, Tam comforts Lewin later and offers for him to speak to Yadzi about what he saw. Jadzi?
I always say Jadzi. Is it, how did it...
I don't know.
I think it's Jadzi.
Is it Jadzi? Okay. I always used to think this with Yetmir. I also used to think that Jetmir should be with like a Y. But obviously it doesn't work. We have Lityara. It's enough. After a humorous interjection from Abigail via the scribing board, Lewin attempts to track Yadzi down. Unfortunately, not only finding the Oracle, but Professor Fell as well, as the two are engaged in a heated exchange. Before we get into that exchange, the funny thing that Abigail interjects with is that she accidentally was speaking to some Kamigawans, and her sign language was actually like a swear word.
Yeah.
Which I think is hilarious.
Again, another nice little detail.
Because I'd imagine there isn't standardised sign language.
No, I mean,
imagine
on Earth there isn't standardised
sign language.
Exactly,
so imagine that in the multiverse,
Yeah,
it's interesting.
So Jadzi's back.
Jadzie's
the current Oracle of Arcadios, and was a card in the previous Strixhaven set.
Yeah, who was like...
She was a flip card.
She was very abused. She was a very... If you built her, people were like, oh, yeah. I guess you're building that deck.
And, like, there are a lot of, like, sort of magical old granny characters in media, and in Magic as well. And in this story, because this is the only story beat that we've really had from her, is in these stories, and she becomes quite a pivotal character. I really like Jadzi.
Jadzi's great.
Yeah.
Let's see what happens with her as the story goes on. So it seems that Fell has been using the students to his own personal game or scheme, as Jadzi puts it. But we only really learn of Delian's intense commitment to whatever cause he's following, rather than any of the details. During their back and forth, we also find out that Liliana is missing, or at least absent, and that the Archaics across Arcavios have been acting noticeably strangely, above ground as well as below. So the thing that Lewin's seen, no one else has seen, but everyone else is already under the impression that things are a little bit weird with the Archaics. It's not just an isolated incident. There was also a brief mention of an incident with Kasmina, although that's the first and last we hear of it in this story. Obviously, it's a hint, and then obviously we get a whole full novel of it. I imagine they would have been told specifically, don't involve Kasmina, just drop her name, because we've got this whole other thing that we're going to do with her.
Now, do you know what? I've been burned once before. So there was a theory, and I don't think it was just ours, I think it was just one that we enjoyed, that Kasmina was going to end up, because she came in on the last Strixhaven set, but actually her first card was in War of the Spark, right? As one of the Planeswalkers.
Yeah. She was like this Mysterio character.
Yeah, and everyone was like, oh, she's Lady Jace. And then also, oh, she's got this staff that's like a little bit like a heron's head, but she's kind of got an affinity for owls. And so it's like, is she like Sigarda in human form? Is it Lady Jace? There's all these different things. And then in the end, we were like, well, clearly she's a teacher on a magical school with a bunch of mages. And there's a little bit of cross-planar thing going on. She's a planeswalker. She can spot other planeswalkers. She's clearly fostering some sort of like dark gatewatch.
Yeah, she's Valentine de Fontaine, but in Magic.
And then nothing happened. Yeah. And she even got like a 2-color planeswalker card in Strixhaven with wonderful art from Eric Schultz.
And really cool, interesting abilities which interact with other planeswalkers and give other planeswalkers each other's abilities, which is really cool.
With her.
Yeah, it felt like a massive lost thread, and I'm glad that we're coming back to it, because hopefully
my problem is I don't know if they're going to do it.
Well, my question is whether or not they just rewrite her into whatever role they needed her to be for this, and then they can turn around and be like, well, we didn't really give you anything to go on before. It's like, yeah, well, you knew what you were doing.
There was even a theory that she could have been Emrakul, right?
Yeah, I mean, anything and everyone can be Emrakul these days, you know. We are Emrakul.
That's really funny.
So we see Delian soften as the conversation continues, but Lewin is unable to find the courage to approach either with his own discovery. So he's still unwilling to talk to anyone about what he saw with the Archaics. We then switch to Tam, who is speaking with her teacher, but is interrupted before we can understand anything beyond her having a task to complete that she is reluctant to carry out. As the two talk over what Lewin overheard, the ground begins to shake and rumble. The entire campsite is thrown into chaos as a humongous Archaic, and when I say humongous, I mean like colossal.
Yeah.
It rises from the grave, throwing everything into chaos before stalking away. Peace returns, but isn't long-standing as we discover the Archaic has abducted Jadzi.
So, and also not just the size of the Archaic, or even just the fact that it's aggressive, whereas most of the Archaics are kind of passive unless provoked. this one has, like, in all the artworks as well, there's several archaic cards in the set, and they're always quite monstrous, whereas archaics often seem, like, very passive.
Yeah.
And this one has star arches all around its head, which are like the kind of like magical monoliths across Arcadia.
It basically presents it as being like almost like the king of archaics, or like the most monster, but it is prime. Twisted as well. The chapter closes from Kirill's point of view, where we see a declaration of Code Una sent through their scribing board, a call to arms. They attempt to leave unnoticed, but they are caught by Ajani. Kirill displays a bit of tact, managing to evade the Leonin, and thinking themselves very clever, they make their way to Titan's grave. Chapter 3, Asunder. Or Episode 3, I apologize. I keep saying chapter.
I mean, it's fine.
Episode 3 opens with the rest of our Teen Titans, / Young Avengers, arriving at Titan's Nest to answer Tam and Llewellyn's call for aid. I did Llewellyn. That was the first and hopefully the last time.
Sorry, that's my fault.
Kirill somehow even has matching shirts for them all.
Kirill's a bit of a fuck ass, isn't he?
So let's stop fucking about, man. I mean, don't get me wrong, I love Kirill and their drive, but there's little things like this. I just wanted us to have matching shirts so we all feel like, get up, come on, you're not 5. Grow up.
So funny. Just like, because obviously, look, you can't always sketch out characters so completely. And I wonder how far in advance, we often talk about sets being designed far in advance. I wonder how far in advance these stories are written, because we've had these characters in literally the previous story, right? In the Lorwyn stories. And I feel like of all the characters, Kirill's one has kind of like developed the most in terms of their voice. And we sort of saw them being like, they mentioned they were good at Mage Tower in the previous story. But then I wonder like how much they developed the character, because now he's like full jock mode, right?
Yeah, I mean, the whole point I think is that they felt very... it's almost like... So my theory is that they were never meant to be in Lorwyn Eclipsed, but they didn't feel like there was enough build up to them to this story, so they went, right, how can we, let's put them as the fish out of water. This is why I think Lorwyn Eclipse felt very busy, when that whole story could have happened without them in it, but it gave us a preamble for a few of them just to get some information on them, because we didn't see a lot of them in this story, and then it gives us a before and after for Kirill to see them when they're a little less swole, a little bit more teeny tiny, a little less, have less agency, and then this, it's almost like they've come into their own, like some people do, you know, you have friends that go off to university, they come back after first year and you go, oh shit, your whole personality's changed. It's like, no, this is just who I always wanted to be and who I wanted to grow into. I just wasn't able to because I was stilted by my, little fucking countryside town. So I think that I think this is probably the point they always wanted them to be at, and then we got what we got in Lorwyn Eclipse was essentially like a prologue to their character, so it didn't feel so weird having all these random characters in the focus. The entire settlement is in disarray, and they aren't able to make much headway in their investigations. All they have is the broken communication from Llewellyn that Jadzi has been taken and somehow Professor Fell is involved. Unfortunately for Kirill, but fortunately for the rest of them, Ajani has caught up to the party and offers to assist in their search. Literally, Cat can't help being involved in every fucking story. Which I don't actually hate in the grand scheme of things, but there are certain stories where it just feels like completely unnecessary. This one, not so much. Thankfully, they spot green smoke in the distance, a signal from Llewellyn, and they take their cue to follow it. Their journey through the undergrowth is interrupted when Kirill's shirt gets caught in the brambles, and because obviously they're like, no, my lovely friendship shirt, no, please. And it's funny because then Ajani's like, did you not have any spares? It's like, yeah, I've got a spare, but it's for Llewellyn, so we can all match together and he can feel like he belongs to something. And then Ajani turns around and goes, how's it getting over his horns? And there's no mention after that. It's just, I love that Ajani's just there to be able to go,
I think that's a real K. Arsenal Rivera moment where a lot of their writing is like they have these big magical moments and then I'm going to use the word humanize, but it's not, obviously they're not humans, right? But they bring everything back down where they're like, this is the reality of being like a fire mage or a giant cat or a horned elf. It's like, I can't wear that t-shirt, dude. Like, it's cool.
How did Abba get... Anyway, whatever. In all of the fuss of untangling Kirill, the entire group are knocked out by a wave of concussive magic. We awake from Ajani's perspective, hands bound, and to his, and I imagine most readers' surprise, he finds a familiar face standing before him. Chandra Nala. Another character who has to be involved in absolutely every story forever. Again, probably more forgivable than this. We'll get into it a little later. She has become the unlikely leader of the Shattered, who are Auric, who refused to attack the school during the events of the original Strixhaven arc, and smashed their masks in protest and then reformed them. I can't remember what it's called, but it's a form of pottery, isn't it, of where you take broken china...
Is it Kitsune?
Something, I can't remember now.
I'm going to look at it.
It's very similar to what Kylo Ren did with his mask in the sequel trilogy that no one wants to ever think about or talk about.
It is, Kintsugi.
Kintsugi, lovely, very nice. So all 5 students are also present in the hidden campsite, but they are unrestrained and free to move and talk with the ex-Auric. Ajani is understandably confused. The Chandra before him is noticeably troubled and untrusting. She has a job to do, a great disaster to prevent, and seemingly no willing to share that burden with her old friend, if he truly still was an old friend. She is beset with severe headaches, a side effect of the residual influence from Jace's psychic attack at the end of the Ether Drift story. If we recall, he mind-fucked people to the point of where, like, they passed out with blood pouring out of their eyes and nose.
It was a real total shift on that story of, like, again, another case.
Jace just cut the crap and had, I'm gonna do things, and you're not gonna get in my way. And now we're starting to see, like, the residual effect of that. Chandra continues to be antagonistic towards Ajani, unyielding and unwilling to fall back into the same dynamic of mentor and student that the pair have known for so long. It takes the students coming to his defense, like the Lorwyn 5 students coming to his defense, to allow her to engage in reasonable discourse. We discover that after the psychic attack, elements of the Mind Maid remain in her head, but not knowing which memories are true and which are someone else's. Glimpses into Jace's past and things like that keep flowing in and out of Chandra's mind. Clearly, when he hit her that hard, part of him ended up getting lodged within her. The headaches are worsening, and Chandra fears what will happen if they are allowed to continue. Ajani keeps blundering the conversation, trying to convince her Jace is gone, unmade, as dead as Gideon, as he quotes it.
Yeah,
and I've just got, for fuck's sake, Kitty Cat. What are you saying? I mean, at this point, Ajani's trying really, really hard to try and, like, appeal to Chandra, but obviously the two of them are very different people, and the way they approach problems are very different. Their histories are very different. Maybe not so different that we'll come to find out later down the line, but for the moment, they are just at each other's necks, and the dynamic is really strange, but it also feels very honest.
Yeah.
Like, these two have been through so much together across the years. Like, we obviously, it might not be easy to forget, but Ajani was obviously a sleeper agent for a time. Chandra is known now as the hero of the multiverse. You know, she was the winner of the Ether Drift, or not the winner, but at least was known for being, like, a magnanimous character within that story, as well as being one of the saviors for the March of the Machines arc.
Yeah, so there's a real interesting thing. I think we mentioned it a couple of episodes ago when we were talking about, okay, they've positioned these Omen Pathers as like the fish out of water characters now, and it's allowed Planeswalkers to become more what they used to be, which were these kind of few and far between planes hopping, like, demigods,
juggernauts.
Like, they are amped up mages, and like characters who kind of go, oh yeah, it's one of them planeswalkers, and then they do a planeswalker thing, and everyone goes, holy shit.
Yeah.
And so I think we are now getting into a new age where, like, these characters are really grappling with the idea of, like, not only are there few of them within the universe, they do have these larger responsibilities, and they are also now famous.
Yeah.
Because other people are starting to see the patterns of, like, oh, that's that fire mage.
Goggle Pyromancer is all you have to say, and then suddenly all of these stories.
Yeah,
exactly.
And like, you know, but if they will insist on, like, being in everyone else's fucking business like how they used to do, but everyone else is now sort of aware of going like, oh yeah, well, there's other planes, so I'm guessing they're all like all over the place.
They're going to become renowned either for good or for bad reasons, right?
Whereas before it was very much like each plane had their own perception of planeswalkers, which often fed into the storyline.
Yeah. It's like being a legend versus being a celebrity.
Yeah. Very interesting.
So as the two argue, there is a tumultuous crack of splitting wood and breaking earth as the giant archaic rises nearby, Jadzi in hand. Chandra, convinced that the archaic strange behaviour is the manipulative work of Jace's master plan in action, immediately readies a volley of fire to blast its way. However, Ajani chooses his side in the fight and tackles Chandra to the ground. Ajani and Chandra fight and wrestle, the shattered springing into action against the students to keep them from interfering further, and despite its best efforts, Chandra is able to unleash a great blast of fire at the archaic. It cries out painfully, hauntingly, before bringing down its hand, bringing an end to the conflict and upheaving the world around them.
Yeah.
Chapter 4. Something to offer. This chapter is easily truncated, thankfully. Like, these last few ones, I've had to kind of go through everything a bit more, but the clue is in the title, where everyone gets to chip in and collaborate on fixing their predicament, namely being deeper down into Titan's grave than anyone has been in recent history. The students and Shattered are separated from Ajani and Chandra in a massive chamber situated within what would have been the ancient giant's ribcage. They need an escape, And Lewin finally feels that they can help, putting their scouting skills to use with Kirill in tow.
Now, at this point in the story, there's a couple of references I want to go over. Sorry to interrupt.
No, you're fine.
Tam immediately mentions Ravnik and coffee.
Yes.
Because she talks about how
having a headache.
her study headaches could be managed better with coffee. So even in a story...
It's such a cliche at this point.
We're not on Ravnica. None of the characters are Ravnica. Yeah. But because Owen Paths were like, boom, Ravnica coffee. And I like this idea that obviously now all of the import-export is going on across the multiverse. That Ravnica coffee's come out on top of being like, that's the good shit.
I imagine it's also probably had the most amount of time to perfect its craft, you know? And then who's to say that there aren't blends and things now, right?
And the second thing I thought of is that there is a moment where Abigail summons some Inklings, which are the Silver Quill mascots. And as we saw in the Ralzeric prologue episode, and also just what we know because of their magic, the Inklings are manifestations of Silver Quill magic when Silver Quills have like word battles, when they have like rap battles, but specifically insults. Mm-hmm. Now, Abigail's character, as far as Silver Quills go, because Silver Quill aren't just meant to be like they're all assholes. They're meant to be ambitious. They have drive. They're not above using sharp words to get what they want.
But in the context of the set, when you put them, it's a single factor. They are a bit.
They're the aggro one. Right?
Yeah.
And Abigail's character, individual character, doesn't necessarily follow that line. She's definitely of the kind of like, I'm gonna use my oratory powers to like, you know, inspire and innovate, and like she's very precise with her words because she has to obviously filter them through things like, you know, her earpiece and her translation.
She uses like telepathy and things
like
that.
Yeah. So she's very, very deliberate with her words. My point is, are these Inklings? Is Abigail sat in the corner being like, fucking bastard,
I guess there might be nuance to it as well.
Who is she insulting to some of these Inklings?
It's funny, right? I mean, maybe they're just residual from her sign language to the Kamigawans, you know? She's sat there accidental inkling.
She's been like, fucking Kirill with this fucking t-shirt. I can't fly properly anymore.
I've got wings, goddammit.
No one looks at me when I'm sign languaging. Poor Abigail. She's the most set upon character. Or she just wants her friends to not be such idiots.
Yeah,
they're all idiots.
Bless them.
I love her.
They're all just trying. This is the thing. This one thing I like about the story. Everyone's just trying their best, and that's just nice. That's just nice to see. It's like everyone is just doing what they can.
Very true.
So, as I said, they need an escape, and Lewin finally feels that they can help, putting their scouting skills to use with Kirill in tow. Obviously, Kirill immediately was like, dibs, I'm going with you, absolutely. Kind of suck your dick.
Come on, Lulu.
The two's relationship is exposed a little during this journey. There's a soft moment of where Kirill's basically being like, hey, don't worry, whatever happens, I'm going to be here for you, I'll always be here for you, and it kind of like starts building into that, oh, we're going to start talking about it, and then Lewin's like, oh, Kirill, and Kirill goes, yeah, and then Lewin immediately gets completely distracted by these Lumerants, which we haven't really talked about yet.
Yeah, these are quite an important part of the story. Sort of, they're the little, I suppose they're the little Chekhov's gun, right?
Yeah.
As literary devices.
They remind me of like the little spirit things in My Neighbor Totoro.
But they are, yes. But so they feature, for those of you that absorb other parts of Magic Media, they were in the trailer, the cinematic trailer, and they have one card in the set as far as I'm aware. And they're these little frog fairies, essentially.
Yeah.
They're like little, like firebug frog fairies, and they seemingly have a small mini culture. They are sentient. Sentient or sentient? I never know.
Sentient.
Whatever the fuck. They're aware, right?
Yeah.
And they're these...
They have a society.
Yeah, they seemingly haven't been that documented on Arcavios. No. Because I think the more and more we learn about Arcavios and Strixhaven, everyone's eyes are pointed towards the school and not necessarily on the world around them, which is a nice little play.
It's more about what you do know about, because it's funny because even Professor Fell's like, go and find me something new, and then when Lewin finds them and he sees them doing like this little like interactive thing, and it's like one is like a flag bearer and they're like cheering each other on and greeting each other, and Lewin's like, well, that seems really interesting, and Professor Fell's like, well, they don't have any magic, so they're not interesting. And it's like, oh, well, that's a shame. So then we see them again here, and it's almost like they're, as you say, they are the Chekhov's gun and the MacGuffin. They kind of help move things forwards, which is quite cute. But basically, Lewin gets distracted by them, which kind of then dampens Kirill's, like, I guess, almost like flirtatious advance. And it's not deliberately stated as being such, but I feel like it's close enough that you can read it that way if you want to. Or if you don't really care about it, it's also not super pressed upon.
Interesting, because I thought throughout this story that Tam and Lewin were also kind of in a will they won't they.
I have my own theory about that as well, though. And I think that's because Tam needed Lewin to... I think Lewin's the linchpin of this story, and the things that Lewin does helped Tam get to the point where that Tam needed to get to by the end of the story.
Interesting.
Because we'll get to it later, but there's a lot of talk about possibilities and the fractals and how things deviate off and finding the right deviation, which will be even more relevant when we get to the epilogue. So the two's relationship is exposed a little whilst Tam busies herself finding a water source. We have a brief moment where her introspections turn sour. Feelings of loneliness and isolation nag at her thoughts, and a strange man in white appears to take over her reflection in the water, before Lewin stirs her from her fugue with news of an apparent exit. Now, as the group travel, however, climbing seemingly upwards, following Lewin, there is a shift. Similar to Tam's experience at the pool, the group are struck with a clawing feeling, a tug and pull within them, influencing their emotions. They start to bicker, and as the tunnel around them begins shaking, there is laughter, and in a mocking tone they hear, "I thought I'd have to wait longer for you to ripen."
Yeah.
They have walked into the lair of a Demogoth.
So these are the demons of the plane. There's a couple of cards, as we mentioned before, Demogoth Woe Titan and Demogoth something or other. I can't remember.
There's also another couple in this set coming in as well.
And they are, as we say, I still think thematically they were probably designed to be the mirror image of the Archaics. They're very much like the Rakshasa on Tarkir, offering deals.
Deal offers, exactly, yeah. And they feed off of negative emotion. The idea is they'll make you feel shit about something and then go, cool, do you want the thing that will fix that? And then whenever they bind you into that deal, they probably take your soul or whatever. They are very typical demon-like, obviously Demonic Tutor being a very prolific card. Yeah. And I think that idea of being big bad and eating all of the little people isn't quite as interesting as someone having who's devious and intellectual and wants to actually have a conversation with you.
They are big because on a couple of the card arts for them, you see humans for scale, and they are meant to be sort of 20 feet tall.
Yeah, I think this one might be a little bit smaller only because it's in all these tunnels and things.
So that's a good point.
So it's not going to be so big.
It's the one big criticism I have of this story is that the sizings of things are all a bit.
This is the bit of the story where my spatial understanding of where they are and what's going on just went whatever. Because the rocks start moving, the roots start binding them up. There's a hole that Lewin falls into. I'm like, but you're in a tunnel. How do you fall into a hole in a tunnel? Whatever.
In a Titan's chest.
Exactly. Yeah. Whatever. So I was like, we then get what I feel is a very wishy-washy explanation of Delienfeld's intentions. He has been searching for a way to return to the past to save a loved one. His obsession with the Archaics and with Titan's Nest, crossing paths with Demogoths in his pursuit for an answer. He dispatches the demon with very little effort. Basically, it essentially makes life sprout forth from the demon, like mushrooms come out of his nose,
it's kind of cool.
Moss comes out of his eyes, and eventually his head literally explodes with vegetation.
Yeah.
Which is a bit gruesome, but also it's like pizza gore. It's okay if it's not real blood.
There's a character in Dorohedoro. The mob boss is like a mushroom mage.
Yeah,
exactly.
So it gives me exactly that kind of feel. Sure. Delienfeld is definitely from that world for sure.
Yeah.
But I did think it was for all of the mystery that built up with Delian and what he was like, why he was such an arsehole. Some of the things the way the tone of voice and the things he was saying to Jadzi, you'd be like, what the hell? How are you getting away with that? And also, who is this guy to be so full of himself and we're only just meeting him
in front of the Oracle?
Exactly, and in general, just being a twat to all the students. You'd assume the other faculty would be like, yo, maybe stop doing that.
But then there are other professors in Strixhaven that do that, Killian Lu's dad is also abusive to everyone.
I think it's funny that you mentioned that. I think that gets a massive resolution in the side story with Killian, which is quite nice. We actually get that full kind of, remember that bastard bully dad? Don't worry, they solved their problems. It's okay now. Please stop attacking us for our cliche. Thank you.
Yeah, that's true.
I think it was just a shame that the justification they gave for it, considering there was a bit of a mystery of maybe Delienfeld's part of the problem. At no point did I ever feel like he was part of a problem. And also I feel like this idea of I was interested in the Archaics in case there was a way to travel back to save someone that I loved. I'm like, that's all very basic, and it doesn't. It gives him an emotional core to balance out his harsh exterior.
We still don't know. They've given themselves a bit of breathing room. We still don't know quite what happened in that situation. We just know what his motivations are.
Yeah.
They're clearly all-encompassing. And
maybe if people care enough, we'll go back and investigate it. If we don't, it's not a big enough thing that it's going to matter if we ignore it.
Yeah.
It's fine. So we switch to... he dispatches the demon with very little effort. Once the dust has settled, Lewin finally tells Fel about the chorus of Archaics and the snarl that they surrounded, and the professor demands Lewin to take them there.
Yeah.
This brings Lewin full circle in his journey, finally having something useful to offer. obviously the title of this chapter is Something to Offer. And the idea of feeling like you serve a function within your friendship group, within your society, within the hierarchy of wherever it is that you're working. The idea of feeling like you can belong and be useful, I think, is very important, especially at a young age. We then switch to Chandra and Ajani, who manage to spend a bit more time talking than fighting. Ajani's still unable to fully commit to Chandra's destructive and impulsive plan, while Chandra cannot allow the Leonin to sway her resolve. However, they come to an uneasy truce. We also learn that Chandra has memories of Jace and Vraska bumping uglies.
Oh, yeah.
It's very much like, it's only hinted at, but it's very much like, by the way, remember that Jace and Vraska bang?
Yeah, it's true.
Because for some reason we literally can't stop reminding you about it. So funny.
It's just so interesting.
Yeah, so obviously that we know that Jace is alive, quote unquote alive, whatever, and up to no good, but at least for a moment these two old friends are uneasy allies again. Chapter 5, Breaking Point. I wonder if that's going to last. We get twin perspectives of Chandra and Ajani. Both have lovely delves into their minds and their point of view, with some great character work from KAR. This is what I mentioned at the beginning of the episode. They are, or the episode, like pod episode, they are very good at continuing the narrative through line of characters and giving them good justification for why they're doing what they're doing, how they're feeling what they're feeling.
Yeah, what I said was literally... Oh, look, I'm not the biggest Chandra fan, as we all know, but...
Really?
The line was... that I wrote down, Chandra's success has enabled her more toxic traits. So it's like that confirmation bias of like, she has learned a lot. She isn't the same as she was when she was a teenager running around with fireballs. But unfortunately, at this moment, all of the times that she's gone, we're all going to die because of plane of threats, and she has been correct, is now she's kind of everything is a plane of threat.
Yeah.
And Ajani has to be like, chill. The problem is, Ajani was himself a plane of threat.
Yeah, and also Ajani can't understand that, obviously, from Chandra's point of view, and what we see from Chandra's point of view, these mind things, and because we know that Jace is actively alive and meddling, like, we can be like, yeah, you're not wrong, you're just going about it the wrong way, and no one else can see anything other than the Chandra we've known for so long. And Ajani especially can't help it because he's always had this fatherly mentor role. It's almost like you can never not see your children as children. And I feel like it's a real clever way of having these two, and this is why I said earlier, I don't mind either of these characters being in this story, because it's almost like a really good way to tie up the end of their conflict and then get them back into a position of, okay, you've gone through a journey, and we'll get into it next episode, but you've gone through a journey, and this is kind of now the final bit of this little arc, you know, this post everything. So for Chandra is, everything is amazing, but everything in my life is going amazingly, but then it's a terrible thing. Whereas with Ajani, it's like, everything is amazing, but my life has gone through a terrible arc. And it's almost like an anti-swing in both directions for both of them, which is quite nice. So I'd highly recommend, if you want to understand why Chandra is more than just a hothead, this is a great story to read for it. The two manage to track the Archaic to a cavern that reveals itself to be the enormous skull of the Forgotten Titan, and are surprised to find Jadzi unharmed and healing the Archaic's wounds, coddling it almost like a child. Now, I originally had a theory that maybe this Archaic is her.
I thought so too.
But now when she says that it's the last Oracle's Archaic, then I'm like, well, I don't think you're the last Oracle, unless maybe she happens to be.
Oh, interesting. Yeah, so yeah, the last Oracle is in like the last one that
will ever exist. This is the Archaic,
which is that is such an interesting concept, because obviously you kind of it's such a, like, imagine being on a plane where everyone sort of understands that almost all reality will change at some point. Like, we exist in a solar system right now where we know in several quintillion years' time the sun will explode and destroy our entire and like no one will ever know that we existed, right? That's not going to happen tomorrow, or if it does, we won't know about it. But imagine being on a plane where your sense of time, because you have this kind of cyclical thing with Archaics, to know that there is an end point and it's sitting in front of you because its very existence is the fact that that's an end point. And
so the big concerning thing about that, as we'll get into, is that might now be a threat.
Yeah.
Which is really worrying me. Like, oh, okay, so actual end of existence. Yeah. Stunning. Thanks for that. Yeah. Beautiful. So opposite the two is what appears. Opposite the two is in Jadzi and the Archaic. Is the school thing that we've seen. What appears to be another snarl or something close to it, a warped, fractal, jagged mass of unstable magic. As Chandra briefly considers her luck at ambushing the Archaic again, Jadzi proves that she isn't a dull-sensed old lady, calling out their approach, and we finally get a little explanation of the events that have occurred. The massive archaic had indeed abducted Jadzi, but only to gain her audience, to warn her of impending doom as someone is breaking history. We learn that this archaic is what will one day be the last oracle, and as the creature's form ripples and flickers in and out of existence, the truth is proven. Something threatens Arcavios' future. A future where the oracles and the archaics fade from existence. And this is the between state the archaics find themselves in now that is dangerous, because every time they flicker and ripple, there's almost like a warped wave of unreality that gets spread out. Yeah.
They're not fully archaic. They're like, it's this kind of animalistic thing that they're finding themselves in is because they're not able to fully realise themselves as archaics.
And they keep stepping in and out of existence. The idea they say is it's like, you know the beginning and the end point of your journey, but everything else is like this folded mass. And if you were to take a step left of the path, if you're like, say, walking down a stone path, you take a left and you're on the grass, is that still the path? And the idea is that if they take a step off of the path, that's into non-existence, into nothingness. And the fact they keep stepping left and right means that something is changing the very fabric of existence, which obviously we know already as the audience, but it's nice to have it explained in a plane where history isn't linear and you have this folding effect. Because is there something to be said that, because you could turn around and be like, well, if the archaic's existing, then clearly existence doesn't end.
Yeah.
You know, if he's able to turn around and tell Jadzi, it's like, well, then it's fulfilling the full circle, the bootstrap Bill paradox or whatever, or whether it's the grandfather paradox. But then if the fact that they're flickering in and out of existence shows that, okay, that cycle, that circle, that is at jeopardy. So this does nothing to dissuade Chandra's mind. She is convinced that Jace is using the archaic somehow and that they are part of his plan to rewrite history. She has spent enough time talking about what is happening and is ready to take action. As if on cue, the archaic wails, another ripple, but then also a surge as its influence emanates throughout the cavern. Alternate worlds and timelines intermingle for a horribly wrong moment before subsiding. These waves, these changes to the future as Jadzi describes it, that influence and change the very existence of the archaics and the world around them are becoming more frequent, like contractions of reality. And as the contractions worsen, so does the fractal snarl, the nexus where the impossible futures and foreign memories bloom grows. The trio take a moment to reflect, they agree to tackle this problem together, to find a solution, and as Chandra lies, she readies herself to make the decisive action only she knows is necessary. Chapter 6. 2, 3, 5, 7. Once I caught a fish at night. Despite Chandra's story and duplicity, Ajani is no fool, and once again these old friends brawl in the wake of the suffering archaic.
Now, before we carry on, this is the second moment where I was like, what happens if everyone's like superpowers? So Chandra's throwing fireballs at Ajani's face.
Yeah.
Ajani is swinging his axe around.
Yeah.
And like they are fighting.
Yeah.
Like even Ajani's like, I'm going to hit you with this
It gets to a
axe.
point where Ajani's like, oh, I'm actually enjoying a real fucking fight. Let's go.
What happens in an alternate reality of this fight where Chandra fully hits him in the face with a fireball and like melts his face? They're having an argument. It is just an argument between two planeswalkers.
I think the idea is that I feel like Chandra is so convinced that she doesn't care anyway, right? But the whole point would be that even if, like, surely he will back down. Surely she can beat him to the point of where he backs down without having to kill him, and then can continue with the.
So this is a trope in a lot of like superhero media, or like any media where it's like a lot of kung fu movies do this, where you see like two friends and they're having an argument, and the argument manifests itself as a fight, and like. What if one of them just, like, breaks the other one's neck?
Yeah, right. I mean, I think the other...
Like, what?
Because I guess, yeah, there is, like, the narrative distance there where you know neither of these characters are dying right now.
Right.
And the whole point is that Chandra's trying to attack the archaic, not Ajani, and Ajani just keeps going, nope, me, and getting in the way.
Yeah.
And, like, it does get to a point of where, like, both of them, well, Chandra's just frustrated, like, why do you keep getting in the way? Please stop this. I will hurt you if I have to. Whereas Ajani's like... I don't mean to do this, but just keeps ragdolling her against the walls and things like that. And I get what you mean. Yeah. Obviously, we know that it's never going to get to that point, so the conceit kind of like is a bit thick. But yeah, very much. It does feel at some point like, cool, maybe one of them might actually go too far and hurt the other to the point. Yeah, and that would actually be a really interesting thing to investigate or to explore. But right now, I don't think we have the time for it. Plus, I feel both of them, and there's a line later, like they've both been through enough. So it's like.
Yeah.
Okay, maybe you've had your time, and they just needed this eruption, this what's it called? When you let something go,
blow off steam.
Yeah. They both need to blow off a lot of steam. You know, they just need to have a little powwow. But we cut back and forth from the battle to the student party as they make their way through the tunnels. However, the tunnels are beginning to change. Moments of the other timelines keep overlapping in waves. Suddenly the air is water, the walls shift and change material. The world itself is breaking. The fight between the Leonin warrior and the hero of the multiverse, Chandra and Alarm, finally abates. The two exhausted, as Ajani simply asks, haven't they both been through enough? Being a planeswalker means you have already been through enough.
Yeah.
Because every planeswalker, beyond a few, have had to have tragic circumstance just even be a planeswalker. And then the obligation of all the battles, all the wars, all the loss. Isn't it enough? Haven't they been through enough? And with both battered and beaten, it finally does. The fight ends, and the war between these two friends is over. The student party finally makes its way to the chamber. We get Tam's perspective more and more throughout this chapter. She laments on the friendship she is surrounded by. She is saddened to see Ajani and Chandra bearing the wounds of heated rivalry. Yeah. She even has the thought that it is a shame that the two could not work it out, which feels a little bit kind of like, why are you mentioning that?
Yeah, there's a real character change in this chapter that will become apparent as to why, but I can't decide whether it's too on the nose or whether it should have been maybe a little bit drip fed further, or whether this is exactly right.
I kind of think I fall more into the second half, so I just don't know how the first would have been done better with such little equity. But we'll talk about that in a moment. So yeah, it's a shame that the two cannot work it out, and that any of them may survive this ordeal, but the tone isn't quite right. You know, there is something a little bit off here. The waves of reality-altering energy worsen, the archaic wailing with every pulse of white, blue, and gold light. Ooh, interesting colour choices. As Chandra and Ajani are trapped in place, time wound to a stop. Professor Fell is unable to help before getting encased in amber crystal. Jadzi is fervently attempting to calm the archaic, forming some kind of binding or quelling incantation around the creature as Tam approaches. Jadzi, oh my lord, God, the coffee's really stumbling me up. As Jadzi's spell further starts to form, an old spell rich with power and complexity, it builds into a swirling mass of pasts, futures, and possibilities. Tam moves behind the Oracle. And with one last thought towards her friends, the relationship she has built, and the companionship she has felt, Tam pushes the Oracle into her own spell.
Right.
And she just goes, bloop.
Just blinks out of existence.
In the moments that follow, as her fellow students around her stand dumbfounded, begging for explanation, she turns and says, I was made to do this. I hope you all know that you made me happy, before stepping into the school herself and disappearing along with the Oracle. Whilst we put that to the side for a moment, the fact that, you know, Tam's just
murdered the Oracle.
Murdered the Oracle and disappeared herself. The four remaining students are forced to complete Jadzi's spell. And through the literal power of friendship, including the placation and assistance from the archaic, which I liken very much to the Eternals. And when Cersei has to be like, hey, Tiamat, can you help us kill you, please? Otherwise everyone on Earth dies, and Tiamat's like, yeah, fam, don't worry about it.
No worries.
Yeah. So it's quite a cool parallel there. They do manage to finish the incantation and quell the beast's agony.
With the help of the Lumerettes.
Do the Lumerettes also? Oh, sorry. But by the time I got to this bit, I was having to skim.
So the Lumerettes all help out with Lewin's, because they're copying the movements of Jadzi.
Oh, that's cute, right?
But
Yeah,
they aren't powerful enough, so they need more people to do it. So all the Lumerettes do the movements as well, but they kind of do all the movements as a unit because they're too small to make all the shapes.
Oh, that's so cute.
Yeah.
Oh, lovely.
That's why they're the Chekhov's gun.
That's it. Sorry, yeah. So I missed that one last bit. So the chaotic energy settles and peace at last returns. The students take a moment to revel in their success, knowing that the current battle is won, but there is still much left to be done. Because technically speaking, there is no resolve of the Nexus thing that's over here. We don't know if
reality fracture.
Yeah, we don't know if the archaics are still being affected. We don't know anything because elsewhere.
Yeah.
Which is in big, bold, capitalized letters. We are back with Tam in a difficult to explain place of many times and many realities all folding in and over each other. I think she even mentions when she looks down at her hands and focuses on them for too long, they start to unravel, and sometimes she has more fingers than others. She's like, I'm going to stop looking at my hands.
Yeah.
I think some of us can relate to that. She doesn't have much time to consider the heavy burden of her actions or the heartbreak of her betrayal before a man appears beside her. He is dressed in white, but his facial tattoos, plus a million other obvious reasons, tell us that this is Jace, or at least a version of him.
Yeah.
And this is Strixhaven, but again, a different version of it. Is this Hexhaven, as they would try to, like, kind of softly... Well, no, because Hexhaven was something when they did that poll about a year and a half ago, maybe a little bit longer, when they talked about an alternate reality, and Hexhaven was thrown out a little bit, and everyone since then has been like, oh, is that what they're going to do?
Oh, I didn't spot that. No, very good.
But whether or not this is specifically that or not, we're not entirely sure. We'll have a bit more of reference to that a little later. As the two circle the sleeping form of Jadzi, the man says to Tam, no one ever appreciates the person who has to make the hard decisions. It is almost done now, and soon you won't have to be so alone.
Yeah.
Dun, dun, dun.
There's also a reference in that story to there being others that Tam needs to meet.
Yes, it mentions others and they're kind of like their shadowed form, and there is very specifically a couple of times in this story, especially right at the end, where Tam says that she was made to do this. And not in terms of like someone made her do it, as in she was constructed, made to do this. And there's always been... Since Tam's original card in Law and Eclipse, everyone's been like, is this the alternate reality Vraska and Jace's daughter? And it's like, it might not be an alternate way. It might quite literally be that Jace has fabricated himself a daughter out of potential from other realities. But the reality is this is a shell. This isn't someone who existed that he's plucked from another timeline. It's something that he is like assembled and constructed to kind of fulfill a role, which is a little bit... not okay.
No, not at all.
And I wonder who the others are, or whether or not
I thought they might be other children.
Or is it going to be that he's able to then pull people that are more aligned with him? Because we'll get into it in a little bit. We'll talk a little bit about we'll talk about this story now for a bit, and then we'll move into the greater arc and maybe the greater ramifications and a bit more of the what we know about the reality fracture arc moving forwards in a little bit. But what did you think?
I really liked it. It was a little bit YA, young adult. There was a little bit of confusion with me between, like, okay, let's talk spatially about some of the characters. But then we've only been to Strixhaven once. This is only the second time we've been back to a plane, which originally only had one set. The first being Eldraine. So the fact that there's only been 2 Strixhaven sets, and that's been either side of the Phyrexian invasion, and they're setting up something for what has the potential to be one of the most, like, kind of big swing story arcs of the reality fracture.
Potentially a full recanonization of multiverse.
Even more of a big swing than Edge of Eternities.
Yeah.
I think this was done really well. And I think all the characters did their bit. Sanar was a little bit undersold, but you can't have too many characters. There was one character where I was like, I don't fucking understand why you're getting involved, and that was Suki. Yeah,
I didn't enjoy... So the only things I didn't... I appreciated fully Chandra's position and arc and all that kind of thing. I didn't like that it was randomly like, hey, you've got another bunch of students, similar to when she was on, was it Ragatha? And she became like a tutor there as well. It kind of felt a little bit forced, because it was like, oh, they all happen to be pyromancers. Okay, whatever. I didn't need the Auric or the Shattered as they are now. I didn't need them to have a redemption arc.
No.
It didn't make sense for them to just randomly come out with some concussive magic. I thought they were all pyromancers. So where's the concussive magic coming from? Like, that all felt a little bit, it needs to happen to put the people in the places where they need to be.
But in general, I thought this was really well written. At no point did I get frustrated with the writing. At no point, because it is about students in a studenty situation, it lends itself to having like a bit more of a, okay, these kids are interested in playing sports. And also I really loved how Kirill, especially, because Kirill, I think, with Lewin got the most sort of breathing room. Kirill is a fucking idiot. And like he's like, super, hey, I'm here, I'm chipper, and I'm the jock, and everyone's happy when I'm around. But then they did also use the fact of like, they're a Lawhold student. They're seemingly pretty good at it, even if they're a bit bullshit. And when they're going through like the Titan's grave, Kirill and all the other students use their Strixhaven teaching to try and problem solve.
Yeah.
Like, Kirill comes out with things like, oh, well, is there any signs of, like, an ancient civilization? Like, minecart tracks? Or
any hooks or anything like that.
We can see the way forwards. And it's like, dude is, like, clever. Like, do you know what I mean? So,
none of them are foolish to the point of where you get frustrated with them. They all just have that kind of, like, a degree of immaturity that is forgivable because that's who they are.
And that's consistent from the Lorwyn story when they are able to read that tablet about Urdu and Isillu, like, almost instantly.
Yeah, exactly.
These are clever kids.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, it's one of those things of you don't go to a fancy university without having your head screwed on, right? Which means that Lewin's like...
And now everyone in the multiverse has access to that university.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, there was nothing in this that made me go, okay, whatever, yada yada. I do feel like once they hit Titan's grave, that kind of extended a little bit too much. I think there was just enough about Ajani and Chandra's like internal monologue as well as them just fighting. And even the fight actually ended up being quite cool.
Yeah.
Some things of where like Chandra like blasted her foot backwards and so she could knee Ajani. The fact that Ajani was like, okay, she's heated up my weapon to the point of where I have to drop it. Little does she know, I've got my mitts.
A fucking lion.
Yeah, exactly. Like, what is she going to do about this? And there's even a moment of where he goes, oh, what would Nissa think? And her first thing is gut punch, and he goes, it didn't like if it wasn't for the fact that I'm stacked, then this would have hurt. And I reckon she probably could have made it hurt if she really wanted to. So it kind of shows that Chandra is like leveled up game wise as well. So I don't feel like it was a really good way of going, hey, it's funny we've still got two of the original Lorwyn 5 with these new Lorwyn 5, and neither of those characters felt like they were being overshadowed or being undermined.
Funny talking about the Lorwyn 5 original ones. We don't need to dwell on it, but I did write in a little note myself saying, where is Liliana Vess right now?
Do you know what pisses me off is poor Garrick. Literally, Jace is the most important character in the game right now. Ajani and Chandra are getting main story arcs. Liliana is a point of contention, was obviously the little hook point, and will clearly be very important because I think that her and her counterpart are probably going to be part of the thing that undoes...
Oh, sure, yeah.
Because obviously they have a Jace influence as well, and it's like, hey, imagine two of us, you know? So all of them are really important, and then it's just Garrett going, please? Can I just be involved in the story just a little bit? Yeah. Please? Because his most important arc was, I'm a Planeswalker hunter in a side game that no one even cares about.
Well, and then he was the caretaker.
Yeah, okay, great.
The two kids.
Unky Garrick, yeah.
And wasn't even in the other Strixhaven
yeah,
story.
It was such a missed opportunity. This is what happens when you draw a character being potentially masculine aggressive, and then you go, maybe we shouldn't have this character in the game for a little bit.
This guy isn't a hero or an antagonist. He's just a big lump.
Exactly. Yeah. So other than that, I think it's the greater arc, the idea of like it didn't take too long to get to the crux of what the things are happening.
No, I think 6 stories is actually a really nice length.
Yeah, the mystery was just enough that I was like, this is interesting, it keeps me reading, and then the justification was like, yeah, of course, if these things are like are history spanning, of course, if something is affecting all of reality, they are going to be affected, and it created enough of a ominous holy shit whilst also just being lighthearted enough to be like, cool, we can just move on with things and still have some fun with it. So very well balanced in my... That's the thing I'd say, I think, above anything else about this story, is it was very well balanced. Very well balanced, yeah. So those aren't the only stories we're talking about today. I don't want us to go on for too long. We did mention that there was a prologue. That prologue is Off the Record by Valerie Valdez.
Yeah.
I have done a very short... did I? Yeah, I have done a very short synopsis for this as well, just because I think it's important. This follows Jaleesa, the journalist, and her flash artist Esmond, as they are due to do an interview with Raoul Zarek, the newly appointed faculty member. However, this is not our usual Raoul. He's dressed in white and black, more typically attributed to his husband Tomek. He is brought on as a law mage, which is also generously tied to his Orzhov partner. I think that whole thing is quite cute. I think the only thing I don't like about this is that you automatically from the beginning very much know this isn't our Raoul Zarek, and I think they could have probably played it a little bit longer before revealing it. Yeah. Because at the beginning I was like, oh, what's he doing here? And then I saw the picture and it's like, oh, he's not dressed like he normally is.
Yeah, he's dressed like Silverquill.
Okay, so I guess he's a different Raoul. Midway through the interview, Jaleza attempts to use Luminancy on Raoul, which fails to escape his notice, but it does pique his interest, recognising her zeal and overconfidence. He offers for the two of them to join on a much more interesting task than an interview, travelling from the school, stating, I think the ley lines of Ravnica have been destabilised by, well, me. It's a long story. Arcavios has unique leyline configurations that may provide insight and solutions. So they look to find Cody, who should be able to point them in the right direction of the tome, and will hopefully explain the leyline disruption. The book is Accounts of the Dawning Age, Vortex Formations, and Eager Magical Adaptations by Skavrana the Oracle. I just like lore, man.
Yeah, it's nice.
It's so cool.
Yeah, in any setting where you get books of things, it's always just a very easy way to be like proper noun, proper noun, proper noun, proper noun, proper noun.
This thing, and you go, oh my god, that could be really cool. Yeah. Cody unfortunately cannot point them in the right direction as the page is redacted. Who could redact Cody? It's quite cool, and the implications. Jaleesa uses her luminancy again. Luminancy, yeah, one of the two.
One of the two.
To give them a heading, the vaults of Turol, where many a Blood Age artifact are kept for safety reasons, away from the hands. Like, so some things are so powerful they're not even kept in the school.
Yeah.
Which is funny considering there was a big ass Blood Age temple underneath them in the original arc, right?
Yeah, well, they probably thought that went very wrong. So
let's move things out and about. It's also nice to get things outside of the school because Arcavia seems really fucking interesting. Like Titan's Grave, Fields of Strife. These places are sick.
Well,
okay?
it's a plane of pure wizardry.
Yeah, exactly. After thumbing so they continue to the vaults. I'm yada-yadaing through a bunch of stuff and action that happens, but they continue through to the vaults, having to negotiate an interesting fatigue maze. So there's it's only like a stretch of, I don't know, a few hundred yards, but if you don't follow the exact route, then it saps all of your energy. The idea is you pass out and then you die. And then even within that, those that have died in the past then are animated as zombies and will try and grab you down. It's basically like the third task in Harry Potter, Goblet of Fire.
For goodness sake.
Yeah. We made it about Harry Potter again. Once they make it to the vault, they locate the tome, and as it is removed from its pedestal, the large stone statues residing within the vault come to life against their would-be plunderers. After thumbing through the metallic pages and finding something of interest, Professor Zarek closes the book, tucks it under his arm. Alas, not quite what we were looking for, but I think this clarifies our next steps. Thank you again for your assistance, you two. And then presently abandons the two students to their fate in a flash of light with black spots as he planeswalks away.
Yeah, those students are dead.
Yeah. And Razzo does not care. It's interesting that he says we.
Yes.
So that means he's part of some kind of consortium. Is he working with himself? I doubt it, because there is another mention of being early when he says, well, me, I'm the one who ruined it, so I don't know if there's any collaboration, who knows, but the fact he's willing to kill two students puts him in an antagonistic circumstance. There's also another time where he says, I'm avoiding Ajani, Goldmane that is, which hints that there's another Ajani.
Whitemane, something like that.
Yeah, who knows. Let's say there are little hints to their similarities, clicking fingers to cause a student to back off as if zapped, regarding people with a stormy expression. And these are the kind of hints that I was like, it's a shame that they weren't more heavy-handed at the beginning, and then it switches at the end. Because, again, the conceit was like, well, we already know this isn't the real Rao, so just because he has certain similarities, I don't feel like it's necessary to, shoehorn in words like zapped and stormy just to make us go, oh, remember the other one's the storm weather mage. It's like, yeah, of course we know. So, yeah, I think that could have kept the mystery a little bit more, but the idea being that there are other alternate versions of planeswalkers outside of Liliana that are wandering the multiverse and just stepping in and out of planes is very interesting. It shows that this reality fracture thing has happened stronger in other areas, because we don't see an alternate version of, say, Chandra. I'm wondering, is Chandra uniquely positioned because she was psychic zapped by Jace so hard just before all of this happened? It puts her in a unique circumstance of getting views into his memories, into his current state of what he plans on doing. Because if he fractures himself, he then doesn't have control over that little part that's within her, or that connection. So yeah, is there something there with Chandra of where she'll end up being the MacGuffin because she's already got a clue into his mind?
Maybe.
Does her head actually just explode, which would be an irony because she's got flaming hair?
Well, I think, and obviously, not all of the fractured planeswalkers are on the same motivation as far as we've seen now. Because Liliana,
maybe even not collectively, right?
Yeah. Fractured Lily is clearly on a path of trying to stop the others, or at least again with the information that we have now.
Yeah.
Whereas Ral and Jace seem to be trying to do something.
Yeah, I guess my question then is, if someone is morally grey, is their alternate form also morally grey?
Well, so
because Rao is always kind of settled in that middle part, right?
I think this is all starting to get put together in one of the other side stories, which is the Quandrix side story by Alison Lurs.
Yeah, boy!
Alison Lurs is back.
So this follows Zimone, right?
Yeah, Zimone. What's her surname?
Oh, I can't remember.
Walu, I think?
Oh, yeah. Something very similar to that. I didn't write a synopsis for that one.
No. Well, so I listened to it this morning. So we enter with Zimone in her student accommodation, because they're all postgrads now, that class. So you're not Dina, Killian, all that lot. She's trying to work on a personal project, which is she's trying to map the goings on in the multiverse, because she's started to notice weird patterns happening around, and she's also worried about Valgavoth coming out of Duskmorn and sort of going across the rest of the multiverse. So she's trying to map Valgavoth's movements and trying to see if he is incurring into other parts of reality. At the same time, she gets a letter from Niv Mizzet the Firemind asking her to work on his Omen Path project. And basically she starts freaking out. So she's the kind of classic genius overachiever. And this is also like it's a very down to earth like post-grad story of like she doesn't have any money. She's got housemates that don't like her.
It's so relatable.
She can't. Yeah, it's like me too.
She's just eating noodles every day.
She's eating student food, and there's a really cool line where she's like says something along the lines of she saved the multiverse through her deeds on Dustmourn. She's like one of the star students of Strixhaven, like the most exclusive school in the multiverse. And she still can't like afford a decent flat. Yeah. And it's like, yeah. But Alison Lurs knows what they're doing. So basically to cover all of her bases, to get to do anything that she needs to do.
That's something which I'm surprised not everyone who is capable of doing does.
Magic. Yeah. Does it. She duplicates herself. So she mentions that she has heard of a mage called Riku.
That was a really cool throwback
nice.
as well. Yeah.
And essentially splits her personalities into forms of herself. Duplicates, not true clones.
It's almost interesting, right? Because she says there are 3 different ways that she could do this.
Yeah.
There's one where she essentially creates something out of nothing, and then kind of layers her essence over the top of it. There's one of where you take a slice of yourself out as like an orange, as she like and say, or there's another one where you essentially split yourself down the middle.
Yeah.
And she tries to do one, which I think was the orange, but she ends up splitting instead. But what she does is she focuses on a certain aspect of her that she wants that thing to represent, and then that almost gets pulled out of her, and she keeps a bit of it within her, but it's almost every part of that person's personality.
It's a very, I think this is explored quite a lot in different types of stories where it's like, what if your personality traits were individual things? I mean, fucking Star Trek, like the original series of Star Trek did a storyline of this where like, what if, Captain Kirk's more evil personality traits were just on their own, and like what happens then? And the sum of your parts is better than just individual parts of you, and blah blah blah. So the story revolves around her duplicating herself more and more and more to afford more money.
4 times in the end, right? Or 3 plus herself.
She does 1 to have basically nothing jobs to earn money for the rest of them. She has 1 to work with the Niv Mizzet project. She keeps herself ready to do the Valgavoth project because she's trying to...
And then there's 1 as a friend to motivate her.
Friend-zimone, which is basically because she's getting frustrated with the other 2, and she wants, right, I know some people think I'm a friend because Tyvar keeps calling me Friend-zimone, so I'm going to take that part of myself out to be my buddy.
And then that part's... She hates that part even more than the other 2.
Yeah. And really, what it is, it's a story about what happens to an overachieving mage, a character that we know, when they're just trying to live like their normal life. But it also has the implications of this story are, A, she's obviously traumatized by that Dustmourn house because she keeps opening her windows to try and get some sort of control.
But she wants she needs the cold air coming in, and doesn't basically mind because she can't be in an enclosed space because then she doesn't have an attachment to the outside world, which is it's like super PTSD.
Because she's not a planeswalker.
No, and she's got like significant trauma that is actively affecting her day to day.
So there's that aspect to it. We have the idea that she's trying to track Valgavoth's movements, which will remind us that...
Because she has like a giant holographic almost representation of what we found out is the multiverse.
And then through that, what we understand is that someone is duplicating the multiverse. It's actually not Valgavoth. I think they kind of come to the idea that it might not be Valgavoth, but someone is layering, because she sees this big holographic shadow, we can't call it a hologram, shadow go over her holographic multiverse and spread, which she initially thinks is Valgavoth's influence. And then when Dina, who's another one of the original Strixhaven characters, comes round to check on her, she sort of goes, "Oh, I don't know if that's necessarily what that is." And then
because I think they have you can even see, and I think even Niv basically turned around and went, well, Valgavoth's influence is this tiny little pocket, and she can even see that it's not even quite it's not quite working at attaching itself. But again, overarching all of it is almost a reflection, right? Is that they start to learn.
So someone is duplicating the multiverse, which obviously is implicating to what we're going on here. And the other implication is that every time Zimone duplicates herself, the version that comes out is her, but with like different coloured clothing.
Yeah,
that just seems to be like the visual representation. Now that is either just a choice Alison Lurs made, or
deliberate parallel.
Deliberate, because every version of the Planeswalkers that we've seen when they're duped are wearing different clothes.
Is there something to be said that the one that needs to come out and be studious wears a blue top because...
Oh, blue magic.
Yeah. And then the one who's the friendly, happy-go-lucky is the red top because red mana and red magic. And maybe she's splitting the different because everyone has every color within them, just in different levels, right? And she is a blue-green mage predominantly, but she would also have those other elements within her. So maybe she pulled that element of red mana out of herself to be. I mean, that's why it annoys her, because then she doesn't have the balance within anymore.
Yeah, exactly.
So her by herself, without these other aspects of her, isn't a person that she wants to be, and she can't exist with these people being a pure representation of that either.
And so there's some implications going on there. I don't know if it's quite that on the nose with the different colour clothing thing, but it is interesting.
I'd have to go back and read it to double check, because I remember blue and I remember red, but I can't remember what the other one was wearing.
And if that is something that they're saying is kind of what's happening going forward, is that Jace has the Jace in the white cloak. It's not just like, oh, it's alternate reality Jace. It is the Jace that we know, but it's the aspect of him that's so completely like laser focused in of like, this is the righteous thing to do. It's white mana Jace.
It's because they specifically said white, blue, and gold. Yeah. Now the gold you could argue is from the spell itself, but the white and that blue is like, we've always assumed that Jace, if he was ever going to take a second colour, and technically has in the card Space Veteran, was always going to be white. It was always going to be an Azorius style mage. So it's interesting, as you say, that he's now leaned into it's a little bit Power Rangery of where you shouldn't just be like, oh, now you wear white because you're a white mage, but that is the easiest way for us to grok things in Magic, and it kind of works from a personality point of view, and then having that willingness to be like, I'm doing it for everyone, has that same misguided white philosophy of, if you all bow to my will, we get along better, right? And it's like, that's not really democracy, that's a dictatorship. And you're dictating the democracy, which doesn't really work.
So we'll see. But it was a really interesting side story, and it was Harrison knows this is a very masterful storyteller. It was a very cute way of going like day in the life of actually her world is quite small, but because she is a super genius, what she does in her spare time could have implications for the rest. It
felt very Tony Stark inventing Iron Man kind of vibes.
Or like Peter Parker is like it's. What one of the things when we reviewed Spider-Man, we were like, you didn't capture this. It's like he's still just like a 19-year-old dude that has to also be a superhero.
Yeah, but is also then very smart and intelligent. He's not, as much as he's a bit of a nerdy geek, it's like, but that means usually that this person has a huge amount of intellect and understanding of how the world works, you know? So that's kind of it in terms of the reality fracture side of things. And then the last side story I want to touch on very quickly, because I don't think we'll have time otherwise, because we're going to go then into the Oracle book. What's it called?
Secrets of Strixhaven.
Chaos.
Omens of Chaos.
Omens of Chaos. And the last one I want to talk about is the Quintorius Can story, just because the last time we saw him, he was on Ixalan. Well, not on, he was in Ixalan, in the Lost Caverns, in the middle of his Dyson sphere. And I'm not going to bother with the synopsis for this, because we've kind of already moved past that. And I don't want to talk too much anymore. But what we essentially do is we pick up on his investigations of the Coin Empire.
Yeah, which we've seemingly completely forgotten about with reality fracture.
Yeah, and that's the thing, is these two things are kind of like, they sit side by side, because I think what they're doing is they're setting up the Coin Empire, obviously being the Fomori, or under false pretense of who they are. Because there was a mention all the way back in Bloomburrow from Helga about the mage in blue will bring the end. And it's almost like the ones from before will return. Because even Quintorius is basically saying, like, across all of these different planes he's gone to, he even ran into a dead end in Innistrad before Saheeli Rai managed to catch him and then bring him onto Ixalan as part of that story. And then he found the Fomori craft right at the end of the story, completely separate kind of to what everything else was going on. And he finds one of them who is then start moving. Obviously that was a dun-dun-dun, will we ever see Quintorius Can again? He's now come back and found a link to the Fields of Strife, assuming that the things that he found at Colony's End weren't the only evidence of the Fomori being on Arcavios. So he goes to the Fields of Strife, which are called as such because essentially all the spirits from the centuries of war are still there, still battling to this day, even though the war is long, long past. And essentially he's using these spirits to delve further and further back into memories of the plane. Now, this links all the way back round to the Titan's grave, because he goes into one warlord who is older and much older than the others. And they recall humongous, like, horizon-spanning size things, and you can't tell if it was the outline of a dragon or if it was an outline of an archaic or something, but it might even be the Titan from Titan's grave. We don't really know. But back in the day on Arcavios, there were these beings that were so giant and humongous. Now, what else do we know that's horizon-spanning, giant, and humongous? Eldrazi. Exactly. You had a moment I was like, am I answering the question right? And he does the same thing that Lewin did, of where he stumbles, he falls, he goes into a chamber, subterranean chamber, crazy. That's the only MacGuffin that people seem to know how to do anything in Magic at the moment, is falling into fucking story beats. And he essentially finds a cache of Fomori artifacts, or at least artifacts that are so ancient they could be considered to be Fomori. He sees gouge marks on the floor, which are similar to the claw marks from the giant that he saw in the spacecraft, which is the last dun-dun-dun moment that we saw at the end of Ixalan. It's kind of like there's a bit of an... I don't like this aspect of the story, but as he's leaving it the first time, he catches a little glimpse of geometry in the corner of his eye. And then when he goes back the second time, the next day, because he goes back, reports it to his dean, and then gets a fellow geomancer called Mika to come and help him, things have moved around the chamber. And it turns out that this chamber that he's only just discovered after millennia has a very small omen path that links to Thunder Junction, and Stella Lee come in and starts plundering it. And
fuck it out.
And it's like... Oh, really? Both of these things happened in the exact same day, in the exact same moment? That's a bit fucking shit, whatever. And then Quint basically goes, "Hero knows the spirits, blah, blah, blah." And Senna goes, "Oh, I'll get you next time." And he's basically like, "This belongs in a museum." He and Indiana Jones the shit out of it.
He's playing our Indiana Jones.
But what he sees for the first time is he sees a relief of the Fomori fighting the Eldrazi. Which is why I think that those giant things on the horizon must have been Eldrazi.
Yeah.
It also might be why... Because obviously, Arcavios is where two different planes smashed into each other, right?
Yeah, because you have two continents.
And who knows whether or not it's the Fomori causing those two things to collide, which then got rid of the Eldrazi, or they maybe also got rid of themselves. But the story basically has got to the point now of where Quint knows that all of the Fomori across multiple planes, because clearly they did exist across multiple planes, all just suddenly blipped out of existence at once. And it's probably the same time that these Eldrazi that were impacting other planes also disappeared before we got that little pocket of Eldrazi influence. That, I mean, there is something to be said that maybe the trio of Nahiri, Sorin, and Ugin, maybe had they not trapped Emrakul, Ulamog, and Kozilek on Zendikar, then the Fomori might have actually got all of the Eldrazi out of the multiverse for good, and it was actually them accidentally trapping a pocket of the Eldrazi in the multiverse that was like a big bad thing. And maybe Ugin was actually wrong all this time, and he should have been trying to get rid of them and oust them out. But to bring this all full circle, Reality Fracture will realistically and likely bring the Fomori back and open the door for the Fomori to come back. This super high-tech, futuristic civilization that has influence in the Edge of Eternities, as well as during the Blood Age or before on Arcavios, as well as trapping the sun, Chimil being the inner sun in Ixalan, and having a lot of influence that seems to be like harnessing great amounts of power and then being able to use great amounts of power. So if they do rewrite the whole fucking story, and these little mages aren't quite so important anymore, it might be that these giant plane-faring Coin Empire Fomori are the big bad and are actually probably even worse. Or potentially more benevolent, because the Eldrazi were obviously a massive threat to the multiverse. But that will all start to be the arc that happens after Reality Fracture finishes. And the fact that all of this is happening in the side stories alongside the main story without feeling like it's intruding on it is excellent.
Yeah, very good.
Fuck.
Let us know what you think about all of that via our Bluesky. Emails go to mtflavouring@gmail.com. Anything else?
God, no. That was so many words.
Thank you so much for listening.
Yeah.
This has been Magic Flavouring.
We'll see you soon.